Okay. The other thing, once you sent those invitations, it's not just enough to send an invitation. Why? Because your email box is full of crap. And everybody else's email box is full of crap. And people say, okay, yeah, I'll get to that email later. And then they may or they may not. So it's a 20th century old school thing to do, but when you pick up the telephone and say, hey, did you get my invitation? We'd really like to have you come over and join us for our open house. That personal connection will get more people through your door. A phone call follow-up is incredibly powerful. And a phone call follow-up is, it's not a cold call because you've already sent them an invitation, right? It might also be a chance to reconnect with people. So the phone call follow-ups will increase your attendance rates tremendously. And in the spring, how many people showcase their learners' successes in some way through an event? Okay, great. Super. Okay. Doing that in the spring or sometime when the programs have ended is a fantastic way to showcase what they've done and, again, get people through your door. And it's a little bit of marketing, okay? And for this one, when you have stories to tell, when you have success stories to tell, people to showcase, that's when you would put together your press releases and invite the media. And I don't care if you live in a small town or a rural community, inviting them. There are websites out there that will show you how to do a one-page press release. If you don't know how to do a press release, then send me an email, and I can send you some sample ones that I've done for literacy and language learning. This is what we're doing. This is when we're doing it. Please come and join us. Okay? And then what do? You follow up with a phone call, if you can. Why? Because the media has email boxes that are full of crap. So you want to make sure that your emails don't fall into that category. Okay. I'm going to tell you another story about an organization that I worked with in Alberta. Small literacy organization in a farming community in Alberta. Do you have these temporary foreign workers in Ontario here and where you are? And the people, their employers are supposed to pay for them to have literacy and language training? They are in Alberta. Yeah, and the thing that happens is they don't often do that because they want them to work. They don't want to train them. So I worked with a literacy organization, and they were being sort of told all of this information about 21st century marketing. And yes, you do have to have a Twitter account and a Facebook account. But they had to do that as well as be very grassroots. I'm like, okay, what's going to make an impact in your community? What's going to make an impact for your organization? So I worked together with them, and we figured out that a place for them to connect with their local community was at the local farmers market. So I had them go and connect with people at the local farmers market and rent a table, which didn't cost them very much money because they were nonprofit. And they took cardboard. It was a cardboard fold-out presentation thing. I bought it at Staples. I think it was $14 or $15. They had photos on it, and they took information about their program. They had their staff go every week for, I think it was 4 weeks to start. And for the first week, nothing happened, except that a few people got to connect with people that they knew who came by the market to buy some vegetables. So they did get a chance to connect with the community. And I said, okay, that's fine, because marketing has a cumulative effect over time. All marketing has a cumulative effect over time. Okay, that's something. There is no silver bullet. This will take time. There is no instant fix for marketing, right? So marketing has a cumulative effect over time. And I said, keep going. So week 2, I gave them a project. Your project is to connect with at least 3 other vendors. Introduce yourself, introduce your program, say what you're there to do. Okay. Don't pitch it, don't sell it, don't push it on anybody, just have conversations. Having conversations is a much more powerful way to market than trying to take a pushy sales approach, particularly in nonprofit and education. Have conversations. And they did, and they started connecting with a couple of the other farmers and vendors. In week 3, a few of the other vendors had heard about them, and they came by and they talked to them. What were they doing? They were building community, and they were marketing their program. And they were showing the farmers what programs they had in their organization, how little it would cost them compared to how much they were making farming, and that they could comply with these regulations to educate the temporary foreign workers and get them basic English training. and that they were able to partner with other organizations in the community. So for them, they kept going. They kept going to the market. They figured it was worth it for them to rent the table and have a staff member there. And they combined it with things like doing their shopping at the market and other things and connecting with people they knew. So it kind of became this little community event, and they're still going to the market. Why? Because it worked for them. It was a grassroots approach that worked for them. So yes, do 21st century marketing. Yes, get a Facebook and a Twitter account. And yes, stay connected to your community. Social media is not effective if you're not creating community, in my opinion. Social media is not effective if you're not creating community. Technology for the sake of technology is great for the geeks. But when you work with people, you have to reach out to them. And the more you reach out to them, eventually they'll reach back. Not everybody, there's no guarantees, right? But eventually they reach back. Let's keep going. Sometimes when I work with organizational educational organizations, they say to me they don't know how to track marketing. Right? We've already talked about in business how their indicators of success are the bottom line, and that doesn't work for education, and it never will. So what do? We find other ways to track our marketing and track our success. What matters to your organization? That's one of the questions you want to ask when you go back and you put together your strategic marketing plan, which, by the way, is a key part of your marketing. I'm going to show you a couple of ways where you can track your money when it comes to marketing. You want to track your spending, every single penny of it, and know where it goes. So if right now your marketing budget is kind of part of office supplies, which it was when I started marketing my program because we didn't have a line for marketing, then it muddies the waters a lot. So in your budget line, have a line for marketing. In your budget, have a line for marketing. And then you want to be able to track what's your return on investment. That's business language I'm using, so I'm hoping it doesn't raise the hairs on the back of anybody's neck. The return on your investment doesn't have to have anything to do with the bottom line, but what are you getting for the money you're spending? You need to determine what counts and why it counts for your organization. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios here. In scenario A, which was the scenario I worked in for a few years when I was marketing a program, we had no marketing budget. And expenses for marketing, when they could happen, came out of an office supplies budget. So our marketing was very reactionary. It was very haphazard. And that was due in part, in fact, that we had no marketing budget and nobody had any training. It wasn't a very strategic approach. The likelihood that people would give up, or you can't give up. You know you can't give up. We need to market. Burnout. Burnout is much more likely when you don't have a roadmap. Right? We had no way to track what we spent on marketing because it was part of office supplies. And we had no method to determine the return on a marketing investment. So it became this cycle of frustration because I didn't know how much money I had to spend, or not had to spend, but had available to me to spend. I didn't know how to track it, and so I couldn't show anything from my work. And people say, well, we need more rear ends and seats, which we got them, but it was a very frustrating experience. So I've learned over almost a decade of working in this field to move to scenario B, which is marketing is included in your strategic plan and your budget. Okay. The weekly and monthly goals are set. I have one friend who works in marketing and says every day you do something every single day. Why? Because marketing is a cumulative effect. And that you go back and you assess your outcomes. You assess your learners, so assess your own organization in terms of marketing. Okay? And that you monitor your expenses for marketing as you go. So what are some criteria for marketing success? The number of events held every year. And how many people come through the door. How many people are in attendance at your events? You can track that. Somebody can stand at the door. You can quietly write it down on a piece of paper. You can buy a little clicker so that you can track who's coming and how many people. If you have media interviews, mentions or stories, you track them. It's part of your marketing, public relations, and communications. If you don't have a YouTube account right now, and not very many of you put up your hand, you get a YouTube account, the number of videos that you post every year, the number of views you get. One of the great things about a YouTube account, and those of you who have one will know this, you get to see where people are viewing you from. So I know, for example, that my videos have been seen in Nigeria, in Peru, in Malaysia. I don't know anybody in those countries. And I have no idea how they found my videos, but it's the power of the internet. So you get to track, okay? We've had this many views over this time period, and you can report that back to people. You can track the number of tweets. This morning you heard how many tweets we'd had yesterday. This is one of the ways that marketers will track, okay? The number of blog posts that you do every month. And as well, one of the ways you determine if this is the way you're reaching out, and when you're reaching back in, you can track the number of inquiries that come into your office. Will they all turn into learners taking programs? Not necessarily. But if you're tracking the number of inquiries that come in, you will have some numbers to show people, and eventually those will turn into either registrations in your programs or increased community awareness that results in more funding dollars and so forth. Oh wait, that's the next one, increases in funding. So this can, your marketing people should want to work with your fundraising people. And if those people are one person, that's great. Because they're on the same page. If you have increases in volunteers, eventually all of this outreach, you want more money, more learners, more volunteers. So what happens when you do all this? It's a lot of work, but you get a very comprehensive understanding of where you are and how you're investing your time and resources. And what are the results? Okay. The results can be quantified because why? Because funders like numbers, boards like numbers, everybody likes numbers, and we work in a really non-numeric area. So we need to find ways to quantify what we do. Okay, we need stories and numbers, right? You've heard the expression "no stories without numbers," and "no numbers without stories." Well, when you work in languages and literacy, it's really hard to get the numbers. This is one way of getting numbers. Okay, you can quantify it in terms of people attending events, the number of information and program requests, number of media mentions, and social media interactions. Okay. Why do you do this? Well, so you can justify your marketing budget. You can demonstrate your efforts to your board, to the people who approve your budget, and to your stakeholders, and you can show results. You want to be able to always show results for your marketing. The stories are great, and you want to be able to quantify it. Okay. We've got till 9:15, right? Yes. 9:15. Okay, super. Okay, so what's hot and what's not in nonprofit marketing? Skillful approaches. This is on page 8. To 21st century nonprofit marketing. One of the biggest changes that I see happening in education and nonprofit marketing for languages, literacy, and other sectors is an attitude change. I'll talk about it. The Movement for Canadian Literacy, I think it was in 2008 or 2009, produced a document, and I forget the title of it now, but they were talking about a change in how we work with funders. And they talked about a decline of an adversarial approach when it comes to funding, and an increase in a focus on partnerships. Adversarial approaches to fundraising and funding are going out the door. Collaborating and partnerships are the way of the 21st century. Demonstrating the impact of our work and our funders' contributions. So the question in your marketing, in your work, is what difference are we making? We know what difference we're making. It's easy. It's really easy to get tired at our work because we work so hard. It's really good work that you're doing, and you want to keep doing it. And you want to show how your work is important to the lives of your learners and your community, in everything, in your marketing, in your communications, in your public relations. Okay. How many people are using testimonials on their websites? That's not enough. Okay. Testimonials from your learners. It can be, the hot new thing, I'll tell you right now in 21st century marketing, is video testimonials. You bring in your video camera, and people don't have to write out their testimonials anymore. Why? Because you're capturing it on video. Where does that video go? Oh, it goes on YouTube. And it goes on your website. So video testimonials are replacing the written testimonials. And in literacy, that's great. I mean, it makes it much easier than somebody having to sit down and write out a testimonial. But speaking of testimonials, on your table, you have a sheet that I gave you. And if you are willing to give me a testimonial, I'd really appreciate it.